Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
Tyler.
And we are here with Seamus, our good buddy, now our new good buddy.
Hi.
Hey, he is the salami producer here at Jack Mountain facility. We're up here in Mount Vernon, Washington this is a FDA, right?
USDA,
not FDA, USDA regulated facility up here in Mount Vernon. This is where our good buddies Preservation meets. You know, we talk about Travis and Sienna all the time. These guys are part of this company here. A lot of the cows and pigs that they bring in go through this facility as well. And so we're up here touring it, and we are meeting with a good buddy now.
This is where your Sunday bacon comes from.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And we're going to learn a lot about meat because salami. We got a lot of salami in front of us. If you're not watching, you're just listening. We got a lot of salami in front of us, or salumi. We're going to get into what it really means and how it's made.
It's killing me.
Dude, I know. Tyler has not been able to eat anything.
At you.
But let's, real quick, Seamus, how did you get into this, making salami, and talk a little bit about your company and what the name represents, what the name is, and what it means.
Sure, I'll start there, actually. So the name of my company is Norcino, Salumi. Norcino is a very common word in Italy, not so much in the States. Technically, it means a person from Norcia, which is a small region in Italy. Historically, pig butchers in Italy are called Norcini or Norcino. And the reason why is it's very, very long historical reason. But going back to Roman times, Norcia was the region that trained all of the butchers for all of Rome. Yeah. And so that term as Norcino for butcher has just kind of carried on into the modern age. Now, the reason why I chose it as the name of my company is because historically a Norcino was a traveling business. It was a traveling occupation. Okay. And these butchers would actually travel through the country from home to home, business to business, and slaughter the pig, butcher the pig, and cure the pig. They would do every part of the process. Yeah. Now, in the modern world, with refrigeration and not everyone's raising pigs anymore, their role has been reduced to more of like what we know as a butcher. They're not slaughtering anymore. Mm-hmm. But for me, and I take part in every part of the process. I do mobile slaughter, a whole animal program. It just seemed like a very, apt name for what I do. And also, it's cool, just not a common term in the U.S. And so when I kind of discovered it and realized that it wasn't as popular in the U.S. as it should be, I was like, oh, I'm copywriting that right away.
Dude. That's dope.
So that's the kind of the genesis of the name Norcino. You asked where I learned and how I got into this. I'm a chef for 15, 18 years now. Went to CIA, kind of conventional, traditional chef upbringing. Yeah. And I think all chefs to some degree are exposed to salumi, right? And butchery as well. And that started really early for me. Many, many years ago, I worked for a chef, and we would do dinners with Armandino Batali. So this was right when he started Salumi. Okay. In the days when he was doing less production than I'm doing now. So a very, very small company. Yeah. I was 19. I had no idea what I was being exposed to at the time. But it started there, and then cool. Working through different restaurants and different chefs, and you just kind of are exposed a little bit more. And then during the pandemic, I just kind of had this realization that this is kind of what I want to do more than anything else. And the pandemic was an extremely volatile time for restaurants.
Yes.
And my plan all along my whole career was to open a restaurant and run a restaurant. Yeah. But the pandemic was very eye-opening and kind of exposed me to maybe that's not a good long-term plan.
Ouch. You got smart.
Yeah. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for restaurants to do it, but I just, it's so hard, as you guys know. And so my idea was to try to find, a business that has a little bit more staying power and long-term, sustainability.
So was I calling it something wrong? Was I calling it salami and you're calling it salumi? So what is the difference for our viewers here?
Great interjection. So salumi with the U is really an all-encompassing word for all cured meats. Okay. It literally translates to salted meat. Salumi. Umi is Old Italian for meat. Salami with an A is dry cured sausage. So this stuff right here. They're often
you generally
confused.
buy at the grocery store when you're at said deli and like you want a salami for your sandwich, you get like
Yes, exactly.
Genoa.
And the term salumi is often used interchangeably with charcuterie. But if you want to get like super nerdy and technical about it,
we do.
charcuterie is Old French for cooked meat. And so charcuterie typically refers to things like pâtés and rillettes, like meat that's been cooked essentially.
Okay.
Whereas salumi is just dry cured. There's no heat applied to any of this.
Okay.
So
Yes. So, since we're getting into that, let's talk about the process of creating salumi, and especially your process, and maybe how you take old traditional ways and kind of make them new, because you do it a little bit of a different style, and we should kind of talk about that because you get really excited about it. And when we were touring this place, about a half hour ago, you were talking all about all the different things and the temperatures and the curing rooms and everything like that. So I guess break down, what is kind of the standard process, and then what is your process? How does it kind of differ?
Well, the world of salumi is huge. Yes. The way that it's done in Europe is typically not the way that it's done in America. So my goal was to try to create as close, as approximate of a product to what you would find in Italy or Europe, but still following USDA inspection regulations.
Yes. And there's a bunch of different differentiations between Europe and the USDA.
Absolutely.
Temperatures and HACCP plans and all that.
And so there's certain things that I could not avoid, like, for example, the use of nitrites. I can't get away from that. USDA requires that by law. But I don't use any other preservatives. It's just salt and nitrites. That's it. And really what it comes down to is the method and the technique. And we're talking about temperatures and humidity levels. Most American salami is fermented at a very high temperature, so it gives a very strong pH drop. The USDA likes this because it makes the salami technically safer to eat.
Yes, bacteria growth.
Yeah, exactly. It restricts bacteria growth a lot. Yeah. Whereas I do what's called slow fermentation, where I'm fermenting at a lower temperature, around 75 degrees, for a longer time. Yeah. And the USDA just doesn't fully understand this. They don't get it. And so I actually had to submit a lot of documentation and studies and paperwork, and it took almost a year and a half to get this plan.
I was noticing over here boxes of HACCP plans and back files over here. Like,
for real.
It's
so much work.
It'll make your eyes bleed. It absolutely will.
Is the difference because maybe in Europe they've just been doing it for centuries and centuries, and then over here they're like, whoa, wait, we can't. It's just uneducated or
it's a practice. It's not like it's like artisanal for us now.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're saying. It's like lack of exposure. Like there's not a lot of people, and it happens on both sides, from the producers and the consumers. Totally. Not a lot of producers are making this style of salumi, but there's also not a lot of consumers in America asking for it, and so there's just not the demand that there is in Europe, where everybody's asking for it and everybody's making it.
Do you feel that number's going up or down?
I think it's actually
Does it fluctuate?
Going up now, but it has been fluctuating for the last 30, 40 years.
And I only ask that question because us as chefs, specifically working in Italian restaurants and cooking Italian food and learning stuff like this, you always see this stuff and it becomes normal.
Yep.
Right? And you see the trends in cooking, like, in the Northwest we have chanterelles and this and that, blah, blah, blah. In Italy, you go anywhere to any part of the boot, and there's different kinds of this all the time.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Here, there's people will know what prosciutto is because they see it at Costco.
Yeah.
It's sliced and it's in the package.
It's
and
not
I'm
part of our
glad you
culture.
mentioned that, because in Italy, it's like, anywhere in the world, salumi is, regional salumi is seen as a representation of that region, right? So the ingredients you're using, the spices you're using, the herbs, the type of pork you're using, even the climate of the region will dictate what kind of products you can make, right? Like you can't make salami in Florida because it's too hot and humid.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in southern Italy. On the tip of the boot, they don't make salami there because it's too hot.
Yeah.
So, that kind of brings us to like why I make these certain products that I do. And that's really comes down to that climate. And our climate is very, very comparable to like central northern Italy. So Parma, Emilia Romagna, you'll see all the same products that I make there here.
Really?
Yeah.
The Pacific Northwest is kind of like that. Northern Italy, you
Humid.
said?
It's about central, yeah. So
wow.
Emilia
Tuscany,
Romagna
yeah.
is the region, a little bit
Okay.
north of Tuscany, yeah.
Cool. Wow.
It's mountainous. It's rainy. It's very, very similar to here. And so when I was studying and traveling in Italy many, many years ago, that was not lost on me. It was like I noticed that right away.
Wow.
And when I came back to the U.S. and tried to make those products, those are the ones that I had the most success with.
Yeah,
So-
because you're part of it, and
Yep.
you're in
Yeah.
that culture, and that's it. That's the thing is this almost really isn't ingrained in the American culture yet.
That's why I kind of had that question, because it's so wonky for us as professional cooks and chefs, because we see this all the time.
Yeah.
And you kind of see like that fluctuation of like interest in this old world mentality, old world style.
Totally.
Because it's all kind of new world for the United States.
And what I've noticed in the last, in the, we'll call it like the TikTok social media era, is like certain specific salumi have gone through trends. Like at certain times, everybody wants guanciale because it's really hip on social media. Everyone's making pasta with it, and so suddenly everybody knows about guanciale and wants it, and doesn't really realize that there's only 2 jowls per pig, and you can only produce so much.
Also,
Yes.
you have to cure it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not only is there only 2, but it takes a long time.
It takes 3 months. So
See, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So we talk about that a lot, about utilizing all of the animal, and Tyler, whenever he teaches the whole pig butchery class, he pulls out the tenderloin and says, "Look at this. There's only 2 of these. This is what most people go in the stores and look for.
I always tell them, like,
It's very small."
think about this. That's why
whole
we're
animal.
doing this.
Yeah.
Think about this.
Yeah.
Here's 2 tenderloins. I'm like, when you go to the grocery store and there's rows of them, and you're going like this, finding the one that you want, you just touched thousands of pounds of other animal that you have no idea.
And where did all the rest of
Where did
those
it go?
animals go? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about more of the process, and then all of the different cuts that you use, because you were showing us in the other drying room. So that what's the money muscle? What can't I think of it now?
Copa.
The copa. You're showing me all these different muscles that you're using. So let's continue with the process, because I know you got really excited when we brought up mold, and I want the audience to hear all about mold and how that's helpful. And then we'll get into the different types of cuts that we use.
Sure. Yeah. So mold is great. We had a great conversation about mold earlier. So we use, we inoculate all of our salami with Penicillium nalgiovense, which is the white fuzzy mold. I think most people are familiar with it in some sense.
What do you mean by inoculate?
So we basically rehydrate freeze-dried culture, right?
Okay.
It comes in granules.
Yep.
And then we spray the surface of the salami before it goes into fermentation.
Okay.
And so during the 3-day fermentation process, the mold will actually colonize the surface of the salami and start to grow this like nice white fuzzy surface to it. And I'll bring one in here in a little bit.
White mold good.
Yes, exactly. And there's
Blue-
several
blue mold
different
bad.
reasons why it's good. For one, it has a very pleasant smell. It's a beneficial mold in that it takes up valuable real estate. So it actually provides a food safety step that's really important. So when you stepped into that room, you just saw white mold everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So because it's taking up so much real estate, no bad molds can get in there. They're just forcing all of the bad molds out.
Really?
So
Oh,
that's
okay.
the first benefit, is it provides a food safety
The
step.
alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the alpha mold. But secondarily, it also regulates moisture loss to the salami, so it allows the salami to age really evenly and slowly. So you get these nice round circular edges to the salami. And then it also prevents light from penetrating the salami. So not a lot of people know this, but one of the biggest causes to salumi going bad is actually light oxidation. So when light hits pork fat, it causes it to oxidize. That's why we age salumi in like dark caves,
Makes it turn
essentially.
green.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can taste it. You can really taste. It has that kind of off taste to it. And a lot of people just don't really know what it is, but it usually comes from light. Like it could literally be from the light in your refrigerator. It's that
When's the
sensitive
first
to
time
it.
you learned that?
Like
I wanna know
not
about
that
this
long
experience.
ago, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
I was trying to make lardo, and I was hanging it in the walk-in.
and it was just
And
tasting
they-
weird,
and
right?
They should have put it in like a
Yep.
black garbage sack or something, or in the dark.
So
Yeah.
the way that they do this style of lard, it's called Lardo di Colonnata. It's a town in a village in Italy called Colonnata, and they do it in marble casks because it's near the hills of Garfagnana, which is where all the marble for like Michelangelo's statues came from. So they just have marble coming out their ears. And so all these lardo producers, they just make coffins out of marble and just bury the lardo and then slam it shut and leave it for 2 years.
Wild, dude.
It's pretty cool.
Fancy. Dang.
There's a marble company right down the road over here.
It's probably so expensive, though. That's the thing. You'd go in Garfagnana in Italy. Literally, everyone has it in their kitchen and stuff. And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's cheap. Marble's everywhere." And you're like, "It's so expensive in the
Oh
States."
my God.
So yeah. Anyway, back to mold. Yeah, so the white mold penicillium, it not only provides the even moisture loss, it prevents light oxidation, but it also does something on the surface of the salami that only happens after 30 to 40 days. So this is like long drying projects. And a lot of people call this reverse fermentation. I think that's kind of like the layman's term for it, but it's not technically reverse fermentation. It's a separate fermentation. Okay. And what actually happens is the mold on the surface of the salami consumes the lactic acid that was produced from the first fermentation and turns that lactic acid into sugars. Okay. And so it actually, your initial fermentation lowers the pH of the salami and makes it really acidic, so it's safe. And then that reverse fermentation raises the pH up a little bit. So we end up with a very balanced, not too acidic product. And it's actually the mold on the surface of the salami that's doing that.
Umami,
which is fascinating.
baby.
Wow.
Yeah, just umami.
Sweet, sour, salt, bitter, balance.
That process is called proteolysis, if you want to get super nerdy about it.
Proteolysis.
Proteolysis.
Okay, I like
Look it up.
To balance out. Okay, yeah. Because you're saying that sometimes they do get too acidic, or in certain regions they're too acidic?
Yeah, so I would say most American style salami is very acidic. It's sour, and this is and that comes from that high fermentation temperature, and then also lack of mold. There's no proteolysis happening in American salami.
Partially that's because the USDA wants it done faster.
They want it done faster. They like to see a fast pH drop. The legal limit for pH is 5.3. So anything under 5.3 is technically food safe. But the USDA doesn't like to see it anywhere near like 5. They like to go way under 5. Whereas my salami finishes around 5.1 or 5.2.
You're pushing it.
Yeah,
Really?
pushing it. But everything is so dialed in.
Pushing it in that matter makes it more flavorful.
It does. It really does.
It does extend the length of time that you have to do everything. Financially, you have to think about all that stuff, right? Because
that's
you're
a
not
really good point.
producing the product faster than somebody else would be. But that's where the artisanal insight comes from.
Yeah, and that's really what makes it a different
Understanding.
product than like other salami, right? Yeah. Like you're saying, the longer time, these take 55 to 60 days to dry these salami, whereas I could do it in 40, but it wouldn't be the same product.
Right.
It wouldn't be the same product for sure.
Okay.
I want the sweet one.
So what is the process of making salami? If I said I want to make salumi right now, what's like that kind of quick process of what happens?
Well, so yeah, it's actually not as complicated as it might sound. There is a lot of science, and there's a lot of like processes happening, but on the surface, it's actually pretty straightforward. So essentially, I'm making sausage in different size casings. We're stuffing them into casings, tying them. A little massaging, and then fermenting them for 3 days. So 75-degree room, 90% humidity. This jump starts the fermentation within the salami, so the lactobacillus culture comes alive and starts acidifying the meat. But it also activates pediococcus, which is another type of culture. And this is producing like amino acids and umami flavor, essentially. And so once that happens, 3 days, we test the salami, we log the pH, make sure everything's safe and kosher, and then we move the salami to a drying room. And then the drying room is where it basically lives until it's done. And that can be anywhere from 40 days for the smaller format, and then 55 to 60 days for the longer one.
Why do we not see this practiced more often at home? One, because you have to have acute temperature control.
Yeah.
Acute humidity control.
Yeah.
because virtually what we're doing is we're spoiling meat.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are professionally
In a
spoiling
safe way.
meat,
Professionally
right?
spoiling
Heavily
meat.
controlled
We're
environment.
trying not to kill people fooling around with what now is completely perfectly executed. Because I have fucked some shit up.
So have I. Yeah.
It's,
So
like,
have
dangerous.
I.
Like opened up my little fridge I turned in with this brewer thermostat, and like there's black mold.
Smell
on my
that you
duck
don't
ham.
recognize.
Slam the door like, oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Just
Yeah. I've got
testing
some
it out.
stories.
So the whole nature of everything you just said is that it has to be perfect, or it could be dangerous.
Yeah.
And I found that like a lot of the work goes into creating that environment and maintaining it. You know, we keep our drying room at 58 degrees and like 82 to 85% humidity. That's a very specific,
For sure.
you know, and so if I go 5 degrees off in temperature or 5% off in humidity, it's going to change the product entirely.
Wow.
And so what I've found is like most of my job is just making sure things are running right? Like making sure the drying room is the right temperature, the pumps are working, and the various small working parts that create that environment so that the salami can just hang out.
Crazy.
Just hang out and do its thing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh man, this is awesome. We're sitting here munching. I'm hoping it's not too like ASMR, like you know. But like,
Try not to crunch.
you have some really cool stuff out. Do you want to talk about the different types? I know some people can't
Yeah.
see it, but let's talk about the different types of the
Absolutely.
salumi that you produce, so we can get an understanding.
I'll start with the stuff that I'm producing under USDA inspection right now, and that would be the 3 different flavors of salami. We're making these in 2 different formats. So the smaller format, these ones over here, are much more of like a European product. I found that no one in Washington State makes this types of salami. It's done in a natural casing. It's hand tied, slow fermented. It's meant to be sliced and kind of eaten by hand, like directly by a consumer.
Do you know what natural casing means?
No.
It's not animal oriented.
Okay.
Right?
Or natural means it's from an
Natural
animal.
is, and
Yeah.
then what's
Artificial casings.
artificial, and that's usually like
Cellulose based or cotton. They make them out of cotton.
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, and so like the larger salami that I make is made in a cellulose casing. We call this fibrous cellulose casing. And it has some advantages, but really when you're talking about the quality and like flavor of a product, you can never beat natural casings. They just have certain kind of innate qualities to them that they have not been able to replicate with an artificial casing.
What is a natural casing?
So it can be many things.
You ready?
But so, for example, with the smaller format salami, those are beef middles. So it's the middle intestine from a cow.
Yep.
They're 55 millimeters in size, so it's like the perfect dimension to make this style of salami.
Okay.
And the other nice thing about using beef middles are great. They're really inexpensive because nobody wants them. There's not a lot of use for them outside of salami. But they're really nice because they're thicker than a pork intestine, and they have fat on the inside. So when you're looking at these casings, they're actually lined with beef fat on the inside. And so that just helps the aging process of the salami all along. Yeah, fat is always
Flavor
good.
in the flavor.
Insulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so it's more insulation, not flavor.
Yeah, I would say more insulation. Like it allows moisture loss a little bit, more evenly and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's beef middles for those. And then for all the whole muscle stuff, we're using beef bung, which is the appendix lining of a cow.
Okay.
Not a very commonly known product.
I bet that's pretty cheap too.
But if you grew up with Beavis and Butthead
You need a beef bung? I'll get you a beef bung.
and someone
Yeah,
called
you
you
know.
a bunghole at some point, that's what that's from.
Yes, the beef bung.
So beef bungs are great. The downside to all of these natural casings is they're extremely expensive.
Oh, that is really.
That's really what has forced a lot of companies to make the decision to go to artificial casings is
Why
the
is it
overall
expensive?
cost.
Think about the process of cleaning
Processing.
the cleaning it.
It has to come from an animal.
Yep.
They're usually a byproduct from another country. So, for example, all beef natural casings, almost all of them, come from Argentina because they have such a massive beef industry there
Yeah.
that they're producing all of these things as a byproduct. And then with pork natural casings, it's almost all coming from Denmark because they produce the most pork on the planet per capita, more than the U.S.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they have more pigs there.
Why is that? I mean,
They're
pretty,
better at it.
I mean, like
Yeah.
in just regionally, like they're kind of, I guess, latitude, longitude style, or longitude style. They're probably close to Washington, right? Isn't that
They
about
are,
right?
yeah.
You know,
It's
like
similar.
I'm
It's a
thinking
little
of
bit colder
areas of.
I think that they just chose it as an industry and decided we're going to be the best.
Just
at
more
it.
about that?
And, they don't use
Wow.
antibiotics as a country. Like there's 0 antibiotics in any of their
Wow.
meats, which is insane. That's so incredible.
The process of,
Wow.
correct me if I'm out of place here, but cleaning intestines and bones is pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they use
Well,
cyanide, sometimes they use chemicals, sometimes they're all packed in salt and sent
Just
in
a
these
ton
huge
of water,
tubs.
even that alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
costs a lot of money to actually process those things.
And if you talk to most small farms or most small producers, they're not saving any of that stuff because
they're
it's not
tossing
worth
it.
their time to wash
Yeah.
out the bung cap and try to
The
find
bung
someone who will
cap.
buy it.
Butchering, killing animals and doing classes at the farm, and we would do that and start to eviscerate it, and all the guts would come out into a little wheelbarrow.
Yep.
I'm like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, bury it.
Yeah, feed it to the chickens.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, we're not going to use it for sausage. I'm like, if you want to start cleaning these out, you go right ahead,
Yeah.
buddy. I'll see you sometime next month when
Yeah,
we get
I
through
remember.
the first curl.
I remember you saying that. Yeah, but I mean,
Ugh.
it totally. Yeah, that does seem like a dirty job, if
It is
you will.
definitely a dirty job.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
And then the last kind of fun natural casing that is uber traditional when it comes to Italian cured meats is the bladder. So hog's bladder is used for some smaller cuts like fiocos, a small ham. But when you're making culatello, you use a sow's bladder. So this is from a very big animal, like 900 pound pig. And the bladder gets to be about that big. It can hold
Wow.
about 30
I was just
pounds.
going to say,
What's culatello?
Culatello it's from the hind leg, and it's the top and bottom round from the hind leg with the bone removed. So it's often
Yes.
referred to as boneless prosciutto,
like
but
same
it's
prosciutto muscles with the bone in.
yep.
Okay.
And it's aged separately from the bone for about 10 to 14 months.
Wow.
It's a long time.
So when you're making the salami, the larger style, and the smaller style, you're taking ground pork and fat and making that, and then you use also your other styles using the whole muscle. So talk a little bit about the difference in that, right?
So the plan all along for Norcino was to be a whole animal program. Now this to start as a whole animal program is really unsustainable because
that?
of the long aging times.
Right.
Some of these muscles take 3 months, some take 6 months. The culatello takes 10 months. So if you're starting out a business and you're not going to start selling your product for 6 to 10 months, you're not gonna make it.
Hard. It's hard to
just
do.
not gonna make
Yeah.
It can be a tough ask for an investor in your company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's even if, after 10 months, the culatello works, turns
Yeah.
out, right? And it's a good product. So when I kind of had brainstormed this whole concept 3.5 years ago, salami just kind of made sense to be the first product to make for a variety of reasons. One, it's the quickest salumi. It takes 40 days. 40 days in the world of salumi is like nothing. But it also is the most difficult product to make. So salami, this type of dried cured salami is considered the most difficult product to make under USDA inspection. I know that because 10 different people told me that when I started this company to try to dissuade me from doing it. But in my mind, the thinking was if I can get approved for making salami and become profitable from that, then everything else will be easy, right?
Yeah, that's great.
And then I'll have the time and the investment and the labor to invest in a whole animal program.
Yeah.
So the idea, though, once that gets going, is really great. Like I'll be able to buy a whole pig, get all the individual muscles on cure and aging, and then make salami from all the trim. So all the trim and the little bits and pieces will get turned into salami, which will be ready in 40 to 50 days.
And salami is probably the most approachable to bring our general public into the
100%,
right?
yeah.
And then experience other things.
Yep. And when we're talking about sustainability and being a whole animal program, yes, salami is 100% the first thing to start with that, because there are some other cuts like guanciale and pancetta that restaurants and chefs want. But there's only 2 jowls per pig. There's only 1 belly per pig.
Yeah.
So if you're just going to focus on those products, it's very difficult to make money. And especially if you're trying to be a whole animal program, you'll just never be a whole animal program.
That's so cool being a whole animal program. That's
This
really
is fucking phenomenal.
Isn't that great?
God,
Yeah,
for
that's
real.
the caliber.
So balanced. What's the chili?
Calabrian chili.
There you go, Jillian.
But hey, honestly though, doing a whole animal is so like our style of like really like what we're trying to push and
it's
and
similar
meat education.
economics to you guys. I'm sure you've
1000%.
learned like there's certain cuts that you can sell right away,
Yeah.
make your money back, and at least break even on the animal, so you're not losing money.
Yeah.
And then there's other cuts that you can treat specifically, age a little bit longer, and those will be like your profit.
Yeah.
What's the conundrum of whole animal beef?
Ground
It's
beef.
Ground beef. So
I was just
there we are.
I was
right?
just thinking about that. Is that kind of like a little bit of a comparison where you would say, okay, I bought this whole cow, I can sell the ribeyes and the tenderloins in New York's really quick, but I also have 300 pounds of ground beef. So how do I utilize that? And so you're talking about taking a whole pig. You can take that ground part, the portion that we don't sell as
loins, chops.
yeah, aren't the popular cuts, right? And you're going to use that to make sausage. But what about like the pork chops? Are you going to utilize that in any way? Because you're talking about the copa and the cheeks, but what else can you use?
That gets made into lonza. So lonza is
Okay.
a whole muscle made with the loin. It's not as popular. That's another one I have to kind of like educate the public a little bit on.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
But yeah, that whole loin gets cured as a whole muscle.
So like in your head, you're like, I got this whole pig. I can take every single bit of that and turn it into some sort of salumi.
yes.
Sure.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But then it's like, and this goes back to the struggle of educating people and salesmanship is, yes, I've now processed the whole animal, but I've processed the whole animal into, 8 or 9 different products that all have different aging time, different value, different, demographic, different customers. So that's the real challenge of the whole
And when I
animal
say,
program.
well, give me a sample, I'll let you know how it is. You know how long it took to make
Yeah,
that sample?
right. I'm not
Here-
getting a
here
sample.
you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a small company. That's the other thing. It's like,
It's hard to do.
it's tough. Yeah, it really is.
But so let's say, can you tell if something is going wrong? Like you're like, okay, I've got this 10-month aged, piece that I'm working on right now, and 5 months in, you're like, oh shit, this isn't going to turn out, or you have to wait that 10 months to see, like, how does that process?
Yeah, absolutely. There's you do this for years and years and years, and there's a certain amount of education you need to have to begin this project, right?
sure.
You need to understand butchery. You need to understand anatomy of an animal. You need to have a basic understanding of science and water activity and residential humidity and all these things. But once you get into the process, there's so many little elements that you will never learn until you do it. It's true, and that's where it truly is like an artisan thing. Is like I had this moment yesterday where I was harvesting salami, and this is like my 25th batch that I've made here, and all 25 of those batches are great. I'm happy with them. I'm very confident in selling them and all that. But I had this moment where I tasted my 25th batch and went, that's better than anything I've made here. I couldn't really tell you what I did differently. I don't think I did anything differently, but it's just the act of repetition. The flora of mold in that room is now at like peak activity. And so all these little things kind of align to create an even better product. And I'm sure in a year from now, I'll be saying that again. I'll be like, oh, what I was making a year ago sucked. Now this is the real stuff.
yeah.
What about the animal itself? Have you done it long enough to see like when an animal is harvested in November versus
Yes.
different fat contents and thickness, and because like a fatback on Mongolitsa, right, versus your regular what you see in the grocery stores, fatback like that.
Yeah.
Crazy big.
Well, it really depends on more so on the feed and the regimen of feed for how this animal is
Not
finished.
so much climate differences.
Yeah, I mean, the climate does play into the feed a little bit, right? It's like what's growing on the ground, what are they eating and stuff. But that's not to say I haven't had a well-finished pig from the summertime. Typically, the stuff in the fall is better just because of the cooler temperatures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say, as a general rule, yes, my busy season will always be in the fall. That's when more pigs are being harvested. But this being the Northwest, and we're such a temperate region, I've made salumi in the dead of August from pigs that were, I'm doing it right now,
Right.
and it works great. So
Really?
it's not like the best, but a true salumi operation, like a lot of the places in Italy that have been doing it for like 400 or 500 years, they have one production month of the year. They literally produce, like in Culatello di Zabello, they produce Culatello from September to October. That's it.
Really?
That's it. That's it. They bring on 50 guys. They all butcher the pigs and cure them and tie them and hang them, and then they're like,
blisters?
"See you next year."
You know how many blisters they have on their fingers from tying?
Tying like
And I met guys that's all they do is tie culatelli.
They just have
in
leather fingers.
Yeah, and in an 8-hour day,
callous.
they tie about 6 of them. So they spend like an hour and a half tying each one. It's like it's an art.
Oh my god.
I don't have that much time
So
in my day.
fast at it, too.
Yeah.
So fast. at it.
Wow, man.
And then, like
I am
you're
not.
saying, their fingers are freaking leather.
Yeah.
I'm not at that point yet.
So where do you talked about a little bit where you got your meat from when we were in the curing room. So what kind of farms do you source? And being here at Jack Mountain, I'm sure you use some Pure Country, but you also talked about some other farms out there. What do you use?
Yeah, so that's kind of the biggest challenge when you decide, okay, I want to make salumi professionally at a certain scale, at a certain volume. Finding the pork that is appropriate for making salumi is really difficult, especially in a place like Washington where we're not really known as an animal, livestock state. So there aren't really that many pig farms in Washington state. I'd say we're more of a beef state than anything. Okay. And so, there's a certain checklist of qualities and kind of philosophy and ethics, I would say, that a farm has to follow in order to like meet our requirements here. And we just got our slow food approval, snail of approval. So now we're like really locked into this. Wow. So these things are important to us. Yeah. So it's difficult to find a farm that meets those check boxes. But also, once you find that farm, telling them, okay, I'm going to need 20 pigs a month. Very few farms can do that volume, right? Especially if they're like a true pastured or forest hog raised program. So I have found a few, we're working with a farm out in Kettle Falls, a farm called Pachamama Farm down in Oregon. And these are forest raised hogs, and they're specifically American heritage breed hogs. Wow. And I've found that American heritage breed hogs make the best salumi. Mangalitsa's great. It's more of like a niche thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas, when you're dealing with like...
you know what Mangalitsa is?
No, I don't. I should ask that.
So Mangalitsa is the pig that we saw in there hanging earlier with a ton of fat on it.
Okay.
And Mangalitsa literally translates in Hungarian to has a lot of lard. That's what that means.
Really? Okay.
And they are lard pigs. Like they are raised for their lard specifically. Whereas American heritage breeds like your Berkshires, your Hereford, American Guinea Hog, Red Wattle. There's a bunch of really great American heritage breeds. These are pigs that are not only produce large, lean muscles, but with ample fat, so they're great for charcuterie. But they're also they're adapted to the land that they live on. Okay. So like when you talk to pig farmers in the Northwest, their biggest struggle with breed isn't about like how it eats or how it tastes. It's about what breed can live on my land. What breed will stay alive through the rain, through the winter, right? Cool, yeah. Because these animals live outside. If it's a true pastured animal, these animals live outside a lot of their life.
They call the Mangalitsa the furry pigs. They're covered in hair.
Super furry.
Is that like a Wagyu? Is that like a
People
Wagyu
call
version?
it the Wagyu of
almost.
pork, but I mean,
sort of.
Dude, they're like literally have like tons of hair on their body.
Yeah,
it's
that's
gnarly
crazy.
looking.
And the problem with Mangalitsa is because they produce so much lard, is if the farmer doesn't strictly control their diet, they would just balloon out. Like I've gone to farms with Mangalitsas, and these farmers didn't really know what they're doing so much, or there's their first experience with the breed, and I'm butchering this pig, and it's got this much fat and this much meat on it.
So like you just did like 6 inches of fat and like 2 inches of
And
meat.
think about that animal's.
Oh my god!
That's a 12-month animal. That's 12 months of feed you just threw into fat, right?
Yeah, right.
So
that's not. Oh man, that's awful.
It's so when people say like Mangalitsa, I'm always like, okay, but how are they feeding it, right?
Yeah.
Because this farm that is doing a tremendous job. It's really nice, even amount of fat. Really? But most Mangalitsas I've seen are not like that.
What is the forest hog? What is that forest raised hog? What does that eat?
So I'm glad you asked that, because forest hogs are like not as common of a concept in America.
Yeah.
And I hope that takes on, because, and this is the struggle, is roughly forest grown hogs are twice as expensive to raise than pastured hogs. So you have to double the price of everything. Now that doesn't, it still makes it less expensive than beef. That's the thing about pork, is it's still a very affordable meat, right? But the essential difference is pastured animals are raised in open fields with room to roam, lots of green everywhere. They're eating grass. They're still in enclosures, whereas forest hogs are literally on a big enough property where they can just be released to run wild, and they just let them do whatever they want. So the most famous example of this is the jamón de Iberico, the pigs in Spain. They just live on these giant plots of land with acorn trees everywhere, and they just eat acorns and sleep under the trees, and they just live this like very wild lifestyle.
Really? So Iberico is that the style of pig, the type of pig?
It's the region, but it's also the pig, and it's just the marketing that they've slapped on everything.
Yeah. So what is that? You talk about that for a sec, just because I know that's like super famous with people. It's the best ham.
It's considered the oldest breed of pig in Europe. Supposedly, there's actually recent archaeological evidence they found that all the two breeds in Italy, the black and white, supposedly come from the Spanish Iberico pig. Italians don't want to admit this.
No, they don't.
But so the Iberican pig is considered the oldest breed of pig in Europe. The reason why it hasn't taken off and why they're actually struggling in Europe to maintain and keep them, right, is because they take so long. They take 15 to 18 months to grow to market size. Whereas, in America, we have Old Spot, and that grows to market size in about 6 months. So it's like 6 months versus 18 months.
3 times longer.
And so that's the struggle that you don't see a lot of these like interesting breeds, is they just take a really long time to grow. The one place that I know that does forest hogs really well is Pachamama Farm down in Oregon. And what he does is he has about 350 acres of just wild Northwest land. Wow. And he parcels it out in about 50, 60 acre lots. Okay. And he just moves his entire herd of pigs onto this 60 acre lot and just lets them go. And it's wild, because you come back in about 6 months and it goes from, picture like, typical Northwest wilderness with like 10 feet tall blackberry bushes. You can't even walk through
Lush,
it.
open, green.
It goes from that to like a bomb went off. I'm not kidding. Like dirt and like trees are pulled out of the ground. They eat the roots of the trees. Wow. They eat everything. And then he moves them to another. But what's amazing is you come back 6 months later and that bomb went off area, it's back. It just grows right back. Yeah. It's really amazing, and that's regenerative farming, right?
The kind of grazing and what's it called? The fertilization.
Yeah,
and everything.
It's actually helping the land.
It's good for the land.
You're improving the land by doing this, and so that's kind of like the overall benefit of forest hogs. Mm-hmm. As a chef, this is the best pork I've ever worked with. Like when you get forest pork, it's like noticeably different than pastured pork. They have stronger, they spend more time, they're more active, right? Yeah. So their muscles are more developed.
Specific muscles too.
Yes.
Shoulder.
From burrowing and foraging. So the meat's nice and dark red. That's the other thing.
Yeah, we brought some into the butcher shop a couple years ago, and it didn't take off because I think the education about it, there's not much out there, so people were a little bit weary of it. But it was that dark red, had beautiful fat, and man, I wish we could keep bringing that shit in, man. That shit, it was tasty. Dude, it was just different. It's just different, though, right?
We have to talk about this real quick.
Oh yeah. So we got a couple fun salumi here. So the one you're hanging up right now, that's a spalla, which is the shoulder from a sow, so a female breeding pig. It's been rubbed in leek ash and aged for almost 2 years, about 20 months.
Dang.
So that one's kind of a fun one. It's got the tyrosine crystals, right? The little crunchy. Which you don't see
those
in.
Those of us who don't know, prosciutto, 18 months, Parma ham, all that stuff, even Serrano, different salt presses, but 2 years.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
It's a long time,
Wow,
and
dude.
Yeah, prosciutto takes like a minimum of 18 months, and it's just such a labor of love. But the difference in like those tyrosine crystals and that like true like kind of luscious flavor you get out of it
It's
is
like the
pretty
depth
awesome.
of flavor in there. There's just so much
I
happening.
love that so much.
And the other one I wanted to mention too, there's two of them. So pancetta and guanciale, these are, in America known as cooking salumi, meaning that they're pretty much only used for cooking.
Yeah.
But in Italy, both of these are 100% table salumi, meaning they go on charcuterie boards. People are eating them just sliced. And the reason why goes back to most American pancetta and guanciale are only aged for 1 month or 2 months maximum.
Quick cure.
Quick,
Okay.
fast to get it out to the restaurants. And if people are cooking it, putting it in pasta, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But if you age a whole mussel for longer than 3 months, what happens is the muscle fiber in the fat will start to break down, making it palatable.
Yeah.
So if you tried to eat a 1 month pancetta, it would just be like bubble gum. But a 6 month pancetta, the fat just melts away.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing with guanciale as well. This is the jowl of the pig, and it's
Yeah.
typically only used for pastas and things like that. But if you age it, yep. And but if you age it for 3 months, it just melts away, right? So not a lot of American producers are doing that. I'm trying to kind of get that concept going.
I
But
used to work at a restaurant where we take a chunk of focaccia and fry it in lard in the pizza oven,
oh yeah,
and then pull it out and sprinkle salt, and then lay guanciale on top of it, and just
ooh,
it was dope, dude.
that sounds
it was
good.
like this very
Damn.
monster version of like a donut.
Yeah.
I love that
So
because
good,
like
dude.
everybody uses guanciale for pasta. Not like it's bad. It's like it's traditional use and that's great. But it's like these are really versatile salumi, right? You can do so many different things with
Love
them.
it, dude.
And it's like the lardo for like I was talking about this earlier. I love seeing what creative chefs do with it. They'll slice it long and thin and wrap it around stuff and stuff it in things and whip it and
It's pure white,
Gosh.
cured all the way through fat.
So what are some of the other stuff you can do with some of these salumis? Because I think that's interesting, and I think most people think about it. You put it out on a charcuterie board with the crackers and everything like that. But what else can you do with it?
Well, I love seeing that's kind of like the joy I've gotten from stepping back from being a chef to like more of like, I'm like a producer of products now. It's kind of a different mindset.
Yeah.
But I love seeing like what chefs do with it because it's people get really, really creative with it. Like what you just described, the guanciale donut, like that's awesome. So I think, like pastas and charcuterie boards is the obvious thing, but there's so many different ways you can go about it, right? Baked goods, even like
Fried potatoes and
even
tossed with like this calabrese, breakdown octopus.
and even like the classic, like a classic beef Wellington is a tenderloin wrapped in prosciutto and then in puff pastry. But like there's you can take that concept and do a million things with it. Shave any different muscle and wrap meat and make it part of a roulade or some kind of torchon or like there's just so many different things you can do with it. The flexibility of it, right? You can slice it different thicknesses. That kind of lends itself to a lot of different preparations.
That's cool. I know you talked about the pig a lot. But we did have that one muscle that you talked about with in the cow that was the bottom round and the top round, right? Are there other muscles in the cow that you use for any of these salumis? Or?
Yeah, actually, I love that you asked that because I am gonna start using beef to some extent. Beef is used in salumi in Italy. The number one product everyone knows is bresaola, so that's typically bottom round, or sirloin tip.
Yeah.
And we're going to start working with Pure Country to start bringing in some cuts from them to do bresaola because everybody wants bresaola, and I love bresaola. But we're also going to start making a traditional pepperoni. And so like a traditional Italian pepperoni is actually cold smoked, and it's made with pork and beef. So it's 60% pork, 40% beef.
Okay.
And so we're going to start doing that in the fall.
Yes.
Everybody's been asking about pepperoni. But I feel like if we're going to do it, we're not going to make like an American-style pepperoni. We're going to do like a legit Italian style.
Sopressata.
Yeah, we might. Yeah. You're talking about like a pressed one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we might do that too. I don't know. It's
fun.
It's the struggle of like, the salumi companies that I don't like necessarily want to emulate are the ones that make too many products.
Right.
Like it's my criticism of a lot of the salumi industry is that like companies go, oh, we're going to make 40 different products and like maybe 10 of them are good. So like my whole like goal from the beginning is to like, I want to make as few products as I can, while also hitting all these different needs, but just really focus on trying to do them as well as I can.
Yeah.
So that's why everybody asks
cool.
why I only make 3 flavors of salami. And I'm like, because I know that those 3 flavors are awesome.
So do it the best.
And so like I'm not gonna put out 12 flavors to try to like hit a bunch of demographics and markets if I'm not 100% confident in them. So ultimately we'll probably we just started production on Nduja, so that'll be our 4th salami.
Okay.
But like ultimately we'll probably have like 7 flavors of salami total, and just not a ton of like variation on crazy flavors. Because the whole goal of salumi, and goes back historically, was to really show the flavor of the pork, right? In Italy, if your salumi is heavily spiced, like has a ton of chili powder and garlic and all sorts of stuff in it, people question that. They go, "What's wrong with your pork?
Yeah.
What are you trying to hide? What flavors are you trying to cover up in your pork?"
Yeah.
So I've always like really heavily leaned into that, and even like making the calabrese, I was like, do I want to make a calabrese? But everybody likes calabrese and like hot, spicy things.
I think that balance is super
That was
great.
good.
Cool. I'm glad you like
grab me
it.
another one of those, chef.
It's funny that
Took a while
we were
to get
talking
there.
about Armandino with Holly earlier, and as you said, like when he started Salumi down there, his production was smaller than the one you're doing right now.
Tiny.
And then of course he's got this super chef of a son who's world famous, of course, right? So now everybody knows about Armandino. There was a line around the freaking block, especially when grandma was in there making gnocchi on Tuesdays or whatever. And Armandino's like starting to lose it because it's like, dude, the more famous this place gets, the less quality my salami
Yeah.
is.
harder it is. So
And we've all watched their quality just dip over the years, right? And now they've moved. They were sold a few years ago to a larger group, investment group, and now production has moved to Kent into a giant like factory.
Oh, okay.
And so of all the things we've just discussed over the last hour, it's like those can't be done in a large factory setting.
Yeah.
So it's like
It's not
they're just
artisanal.
inherently a certain level of product because of that.
Yeah.
There's a fine line, there's a balance, and there's you have to kind of put your line in the
stop.
sand.
Yeah, and I struggle with that too because it's like I have friends that have had salumi companies that it grew too fast or it grew out of their control or their product suffered, and it's like they were offered a lot of money, and so that's hard to turn down.
It's like Chris Constantino.
Yeah.
He just quit. He stopped. His project was great. He just, nope, I don't want to do it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's expensive, and there's so many variables, and as the more fame you get from your delicious product, the more people want it, and the demand is like you really got to draw that line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I'm not gonna do more than we're doing right now.
I was given the advice too by someone I respect a lot that sales figures are great, but your revenue is the far more important figure, right? And so I think a lot of companies expand because they want more sales, bigger sales numbers,
Yeah.
but their revenue actually goes down. Like their percentage
profit,
of revenue
yeah.
often decreases when they scale up like that. And so I'm ambitious, but I'm not so ambitious that I feel like my salumi has to be in every shop and every restaurant in the world. I would rather, have the problem, the good problem of being able to be really picky about where it goes.
Yeah.
And then create like a sustainable life for myself where I'm making enough money, but I don't, But that's not to say years down the road, if someone just offered me millions of dollars for the company, I wouldn't just sell it and move to Hawaii. But
You want to buy a restaurant?
Hey,
one of these days that'll work.
one last question for you. Would you ever think about using Wagyu beef?
Yes.
Now that because you got that pure country.
100%.
So how would that
good.
change it a little
when it
bit?
comes to Brazola, there's no better breed than Wagyu.
Bro, could you imagine an eye round?
I've done it.
Of
It's
like,
insane.
Like a purebred or even an F1.
When we were working with Jerry Reeves from Bar R at the
Bar R,
at the
shout out.
Shambles in 2018, we were getting whole animals from him, and we were just messing around doing Brazola from like tri-tips and like just random cuts.
Go.
We're like, let's see what happens.
Dude, tri-tip
They were all
Brazola?
fantastic.
What is Brazola?
Every
Sorry.
single one.
It's
It's just this, but with beef. Yeah,
Cured beef.
you know, people call it beef prosciutto because it's essentially the same muscle. Cool. But the problem with doing with beef is it has to be very marbled beef, right? If it's really lean, the reason why pork works so well in salumi because it has so much fat. Yeah, and so if you're switching to like a lean beef and it's gonna dry too quickly, it's gonna become like almost like sandpapery and then like just too lean, right? So you need a breed that has a ton of fat, and Wagyu is amazing.
Wagyu has a little bit of fat in it, I heard.
Strongly suggest the purebred Pacific or pure country.
Oh yeah,
dude, we've been tasting a bunch of those different cuts. New York, fucking phenomenal, dude.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
And
fat on tri-tip.
Oh baby,
it's 93%, right?
Yeah. And then but the thing about Wagyu too is you can get those lesser cuts, like the bottom round, the top round, the eye of round, and they're still incredible. Seriously. And then you're turning them into Brezola, which is now a high value product.
It could be a game changer,
dude. Yeah, Wagyu beef in the salumi world,
fucking for real.
Oh, dude, that blog's coming out soon.
I mean, you also get like the benefit of like the marketing, right? Now you get to put Wagyu on everything. I mean, as you guys know, that's like such a seller nowadays.
It is, and that's one of the conversations that we have often on the Meat Dudes is how we take that lore, just the name, out and talk about why it is as fucking awesome as it is.
Yeah, why is the beef better?
And it's such brilliant marketing, right? Like as you guys probably know, I'm sure, like Wagyu is not a real word. In Japan, no one uses that term. It's purely exported to the world, and it just means Japanese beef.
Yeah, it just means beef Japanese over there. Yeah. It's almost a detriment to it because people hear Wagyu, and they're just like, well, it's insane, it's too crazy. We just had a podcast about it where people almost hate it because they're like, well, I could never afford it and it's ridiculous, and it's like, dude, but just like you said, take the name out. Just look at it. It's a super prime beef. It's beautiful. We're all looking. Most of us are looking for marbling. Like I said, you could like that grass fed. That's fine too. But you're looking for when you go to the store and you see a beautiful steak, it's usually because it's marbled. It's not because it's grass fed.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people want to eat that. It's popping, exactly. So let's give it a shot. I'd love to have some Wagyu salumi. We'll see what happens. 10 months from now.
Man, it comes down to it goes back to like those logistics and volumes, right? So it's like, all right, I find the breed of cow that I want. Now I have to find someone who can provide me with 40 top rounds or bottom rounds every month. And that becomes challenging, right? Yeah. It's challenging. And
just because we need that stuff too.
Yeah. We're solving the case.
Yeah, man. Well, Seamus, is there anything else that you want people to know about salumi? I think we covered some good stuff, but
no, I think we nerded out pretty good.
I've now eaten probably 3 pounds.
Yeah, man.
Please take all this stuff with you.
Really great stuff, man. Thanks for setting all of this up, giving us this tour, talking to us about your awesome product. I mean, this has been awesome.
And we'll start production on all these whole muscle salumi this fall.
Oh, that's so cool.
So early to mid 2025, I should have all this stuff for sale.
Dude, that's gonna be.
Which sounds like a long ways out, but it's not.
And we'll come back. We'll come back for that and slice that stuff up.
Absolutely,
yeah. Shoot some more videos, man.
That dry curing room will just be completely full probably by the end of a year from now.
Oh, that's exciting.
That's the plan.
Dude, that's exciting. Well, thank you, Seamus. Thanks for giving us a tour and teaching us all about salumi versus salami.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, man. Well, let's sign it off for the Meat Dudes here. I'm Evan.
Tyler.
Seamus.
Let's go.